end up having some issues because we're just kind of going through and learning some of this. But I wanted to welcome everyone. We are really, really excited for this week. It is International Coaching Week. I'm Deborah Armstrong. I'm the president of ICF High Country. So during this time, it's a time of in COVID, we want to learn how to keep moving forward. And that's our theme for this coaching week. So this is our first session, which is moving yourself forward in your career. And then we also have moving yourself forward
any numbers.
in your life, and then in business, and then overall well-being and health. So we have a great lineup. And then on Friday, we have our regular ICF High Country meeting with ethics with Linda Setran. So we're going to jump in today and get started because we have some really good information with some really great presenters. A couple of just housekeeping. Can you please all make sure you're on mute? And at the end, we will look and see if the best way to handle questions, it might be by you guys typing them in. It also might be just raising your hand on the bottom. You'll see a place that says raise hand, and then we can call on you. And sometimes it works better instead of typing. So that's kind of up to you on that part when we get there. So I'm gonna move forward on here. My thing will move forward. There we go. So International Coaching Week, it is May 4th through the 10th. And we are ICF High Country, which is not letting me move forward. Okay, so fast forward and curious. So we have today Stacy Harshman, Stephanie Renk, and Pamela Thompson in terms of our coaches. I'm going to do the little bio. So I have my little paper. I know all three of them. I'm blessed to call all three of them my friend, but I'm going to read their bio because sometimes they have things in there I don't even know about. It's like surprises me. So, so the first speaker we're going to have today is Stacy Harshman. She is the founder of Your Fulfilling Life Career Coaching, a firm focused on helping individuals find meaningful work. Prior to coaching, Stacy was a corporate recruiter for Albertsons and the American Red Cross. Stacy has her master's degree in management from Colorado State University, a bachelor's degree in business administration from Northwestern Nazarene University, and certifications as a career management coach, CCMC, a senior professional human resources, SPHR, and job search strategist as an emotional intelligence practitioner. Second, we have Pamela Kleibrink Thompson. She is a creative career coach and writes the column The Career Coach, and on Animation World Network. A career coach since 1999, she has helped clients around the world from the United Arab Emirates to the UK to the United States. She is an internationally known speaker and has presented at conferences from Stuttgart, Germany to San Diego, California, and at schools from Singapore to Sarasota. She has a background in animation and was a production manager on The Simpsons. Pamela has written and produced training films for AT&T and IBM, and her articles have appeared in more than 110 publications, from Entrepreneur to the Costco Connection. And last but not least, we have our program chairman, who's actually put all of this together, so you guys can thank Stephanie for all these great sessions we're going to be having. And she's the founder and co-owner of Idaho Next Steps Coaching. She's helps individuals seeking new roles, and is a career as a certified professional resume writer and job search coach. Since 2018, Stephanie has met with individuals with various backgrounds and industry experience, collaborating to develop a career portfolio that successfully highlights their professional impact for recruiters to see. Prior to writing and coaching, Stephanie developed a fervent passion for helping others take their professional lives to the next level. During her 10 years of experience on the business side of hiring, setting up job role postings, interviewing, hiring, and training employees for various roles, and helping team members outline the goals during employee performance reviews. Stephanie holds a master's in business administration from Northwestern Nazarene University and a bachelor's in business administration and general management from Boise State University. She is also certified through the Professional Association of Resume Writers and Career Coaches. Welcome all of you, and thank you for being here. So we're going to start off. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to turn this over first to Stacy. Let me go to stop sharing my screen and turning it over to Stacy.
Thank you very much. Today we're going to talk first about preparing yourself for a successful job search. I'm going to start sharing my screen here. Hopefully everybody can see that. When I work with people, I often realize that they do not take any time to prepare themselves mentally for a job search. And that leads to a very unfocused job search and a very frustrating job search. So today we're going to talk about 3 elements that you can do to prepare yourself for a successful job search. We're going to talk through the FIT model. FIT is an acronym. F stands for fulfillment, I stands for identity, and T stands for things that matter. I want to first ask the question, why do you work? Now, the first thing that may come to mind is, well, I work for a paycheck. Yes, you do, but is there anything deeper? We often think of a job as something like Webster's defines it as a piece of work, something that has to be done. And often we do jobs just simply to put money or food on the table. But is there a higher level? Well, there's a career. A career, the word actually comes from the Latin word carrera, meaning a road for vehicles. So when you're in a career, you're going a certain direction. But is there anything more? There's a calling. And that's what connects you to the difference you want to make in the world. That's that deeper intrinsic value, the reason that you go to work. There was an interesting story told of a researcher that went to NASA. He went there to research jobs. He went in after hours, and the first person that he encountered was a janitor. He asked him, well, what do you do? The janitor said, well, I clean up messes. This person was in the mindset of a job. The next person that he went to, he asked him, what do you do? This person was also a janitor. And he said, well, I've been here 10 years. I'm the manager of the cleaning staff. And we go and clean and take care of the place. This person was in the mindset of having a career. He was going in a direction. The third person the researcher encountered was also a janitor, and he asked him, what do you do? The person thought for a moment and said, well, I'm part of the team that helps put people into space. This person was in the mindset of a calling. And if I had to guess out of all 3 of them, I bet the last person who saw his work as a calling was the most fulfilled. So thinking about the meaning that you want to align yourself with in your work will help you in understanding what fulfillment is to you. Now we want to think about the second element, your identity, who you are. A big part of you is your strengths. Excuse me. You want to work from your strengths. But first of all, what is a strength? A strength is an activity that comes easily to you, and afterwards you feel energized. Now, sometimes we think of a strength as something that you do well, but that's only part of it. You have to do it well and feel energized by it. If you only do it well and you feel drained afterwards, that is a weakness. So, for example, when I was in college, I took accounting. And at the end of the semester, the professor came up to me and said, you're getting an A in the course. Maybe you should consider accounting being your major. Well, what that professor didn't know was that after I did accounting, I felt totally drained. So to me, accounting was a weakness. Gallup did an interesting research study on strengths. What they did was they took two groups of individuals. One group had reading as their strength. The other group of individuals had reading as their weakness. So the readers that had reading as their strength read at a very high rate of words per minute. Those that had reading as their weakness read at a low rate of words per minute. Gallup ended up taking both groups through a speed reading course, and they measured their results at the end. Let's take a look at the slow readers. They increased their words per minute by 50%. Not bad. I'd like to increase my words per minute by 50%. But now let's look at the fast readers. They increased their words per minute by 600%. That's because reading was their strength. And if you work in your strengths, they increase exponentially. If you work in your weaknesses, they may increase some, but not nearly what they would do if you worked in your strengths. Gallup also went on to find if you work in your strengths every day, you're 6 times more likely to be engaged in your work. In other words, motivated to do your work. The hard part is identifying your strengths. And I work with my clients a lot on identifying their strengths. But here is something that you can think about on your own. And that is, what activities are you doing when you are in the flow, when you lose track of time? That could be an indicator of a strength. Another indicator could be the compliments that you dismiss. Often when we're working in our strengths, we assume that everybody can do that well. And sometimes we get compliments and we think, that's not a compliment, everybody can do that. But if you get compliments like that, take notice, because that may be a strength for you. So identifying your strengths is important. Another thing that is important is to really think through how you've contributed to your company's success. How you've contributed to your company's success can be part of your personal brand, along with your strengths. How I like to think of your company's success is developing stories. I like to call these stories CAR stories, which is also an acronym. C stands for the challenge you've had to overcome. A stands for the action you took to resolve the issue. And R stands for the results that you had. And if you can add a metric such as time saved, money saved, efficiency gained, that becomes a more powerful answer. So here's just a quick example from my past. When I worked for Albertsons, I worked in recruiting, and we had 2 other people in my department. Whenever we got a resume in, invariably we would get a phone call saying, "Did you get my resume?" This was causing our department to have a lot of time answering phone calls. The action that I took was to develop a message that we sent out saying, "We have your resume and we will be getting back to you within a month." This simple action ended up saving our department $700 each month for the time savings. So you can see from this example, the challenge I had, the action, and the results. These stories can be used in a number of ways. First of all, to build a resume that Stephanie will talk about. Secondly, you can use it for your LinkedIn profile. Pamela will be talking about that. And third, you can use it in interview situations. Again, these and your strengths are part of your personal brand. Now let's talk about the third element that you want to think through in your job search. And that is developing a list of things that matter in your next job. Instead of just falling into a job, being proactive and developing this list. Things such as work-life balance. How many hours do you want to work? Company culture. What kind of a culture do you want to work in? You can get some idea from looking at employee review sites such as Glassdoor and Vault, VAULT.com. You also want to think about the boss. We were told over and over and over again in human resources that people do not quit their job, they quit their boss. So thinking through the elements, the qualities of a boss that you work well with. So to sum it all up, you want to proactively choose your path. You want to think through what is fulfilling to you. You want to think through what are your strengths, how will you utilize them, what are your accomplishments, and finally, thinking through what are important elements that you would like to have in your next job. To close, I'd like to look at this quote from Pete Carroll. He said, "Each person holds so much power within themselves that needs to be let out. Sometimes they need a little nudge, a little direction, a little support, a little coaching, and the greatest things can happen. So if you need just a little bit of coaching, contact me." Now I'd like to hand it over to Stephanie, and she's going to talk about resume building.
Thank you, Stacy. Let me pop open my PowerPoint. Okay, can you guys see that okay? Getting some head nods, great. So my name is Stephanie Renk, and I'm a certified professional resume writer. And to tag on what Stacy was discussing with the FIT model and the CAR model, we want to talk about who you are on paper. So who are you? So once you've thought about your FIT model, what fulfills you, the things that matter, things like that, and your CARs, which are going to be very important later in this discussion, we have to think about how to make it on paper. There's a lot of standards that are now outdated, and now we have to tackle ATS, which is Application Tracking System. So we're going to talk about a couple of those aspects of how to pass the technology and to get in front of a recruiter today. So it's very important that, as Stacy was discussing, to think about who are you and where you want to go when you're writing this resume. So a quick snapshot about resume sections. These are all very important, and we have to think about what we need, what we must have, what would be nice to have, and things that may not be on this piece of paper because we just don't have the space. So must-haves, contact details, right? We want to show your work history as well as your education. The nice-to-haves, which I think are very, very important, would be your professional summary and your core competencies. Think of this as like your buzzword bank. The maybes would be your community service, your volunteer work, or other related content such as associations, group projects, and we'll get into some of the details that may work. So this is just a quick list of things that you need to consider when you're putting your resume together. So your summary. So one of the outdated formats is to have what's called an objective. For example, to gain a position as an RN at St. Luke's. If you think about it, if you're applying for a role, it's kind of an obvious, yes, you're applying to be an RN. So nowadays you talk about your summary or a profile about yourself, and these things could include, your role. So I always bold like nursing student or RN, or basically that title that you're going for. You may talk about your years of experience, quick shot, 10 plus years, 5 years, or in this case, graduating in May 2020. And then it's a really great place to put things about your focuses, your goals, maybe some soft skills, like a little bit about who you are. I wouldn't put this paragraph should be about 3 to 5 lines max, and it just gives that recruiter just a little bit of idea before they dive into the details on your resume. Your core competencies, this could be a lot of different things. So this is basically your buzzword bank. So it may be your areas of expertise. This may be your soft skills list, or you could talk about your technical skills. This section very much differs on where you're at in your career and also your field. So for example, if I have an IT project manager we're going to talk a lot about areas of expertise. If it's a software developer, I might list some of his more technical skills. They have a ton of different coding languages that they could talk about. We'll have, a lot of those technical jargon that IT guys like. If you're early in your career, like you just recently graduated, it might be more about your soft skills, more about your personality, because you don't have a lot of experience to fall back on. So very much depends where you're at. And, if you're a nurse, for example, you might be talking about the department that you've worked in, some of the tasks that you have or the equipment that you use, right? If you're stuck, and even if you have a great section, also look at the job description. They tend to list out key buzzwords within that job description. So feel free to add those in, but please make sure that they are true to your personality and your background. So another quick list about your organization. We need titles, right? We need the organization and the location. If you've always been in Boise and you go out of state, they may not know where Boise, Meridian, Kuna, some of these smaller towns are, right? The dates, months and years are more ATS friendly. You don't have to have the months, but it is slightly nicer to have those for the ATS tracking systems. And of course, list these in reverse chronological order. This should mean your current job or your latest job all the way back to your oldest job, right? So it's very, very important to do that. Past just the rough framework of your work experience, it's all about the job descriptions. Personally, I like bullets over paragraphs. I find that if you're writing a paragraph, recruiters just kind of get tired. They might not even finish the full thing. So make sure, you're using some strong action verbs, right? And think about those car models, right? What was the challenge? What was your action? And what was the result? This will naturally highlight your impact, and you can really talk a lot. The farther you are in your career, you can talk more about some metrics and what I call the numbers, right? We want to talk about percentages, dollar figures, anything you can talk about to showcase your impact. Some folks, though, maybe it's not about numbers, maybe it's more about the examples that you have. We always want to showcase what you did for that company. So think about those car examples, and it really is a nice interview step because you've already written it down. If you have your resume in front of you, it's a good reminder during that interview as well. If you get stuck, Google the job title. I mean, even as a writer, I do that all the time just to make sure I'm going in the right direction of the role that, I'm writing about. So, something like IT project manager job description, ton will come up. Some of my favorite websites to use are Workable as well as Better Team. Those have some great examples on there. But of course, don't copy and paste. It'll be very obvious if you copy and paste. So put it back into your own words. So I just wanted to showcase two examples here. So when I work with some younger clients, so, coming out of high school or coming out of college even, they'll say something like, oh, I was just a server, or I was just a sales associate. You weren't just anything. You had an amazing role. And so we want to showcase how we can make that more of an impact on paper. So as you can see, I've seen this where I welcomed guests, I seated them, I took orders, and I served beverages. Yes, we know that that's what a server does. But if you look at the right, you can see how we can expand on some of this. So maybe mentioning how many guests did you see? I mean, how big was this restaurant, right? Maybe even showcasing what type of restaurant. You can mention some details. So customer service is always big. So you answered questions, you made recommendations, showcasing that you didn't make any errors. Or you provided, an excellent experience because you were diligent, and then you processed payments. So then you had responsibilities, right? So you aren't just any role, no matter where you're at in your career. Now, an event coordinator, this is an event coordinator example. I wanted to show how those metrics can be huge. So if you are a team leader of any sort, always highlight the number of members on your team that you're managing. So in this case, this person had 4 staff members, but also coordinated 30 plus volunteers within a $200,000 budget. Money is everything when you're involved in certain areas of the business, right? So make sure you highlight that. The impact, she handled 15 events and she had revenues of $134,000. I mean, that's showcasing how much she did in 1 year. And then we went on to show some community efforts, and again, generating $30,000 in contributions. So if you have these numbers, input them. As you can see, I bold them so they pop out. I think it helps just so it's not the same text over and over and over. But absolutely, if you have those metrics, highlight them. And then again, in your interview, it's really easy to reference those. So as far as education goes, this could be degrees, this could be certifications, maybe you went to school but didn't finish, go ahead and add it, right? Absolutely highlight if you have a bachelor's, master's, anything like that, or your certification. Make sure you list the whole name. And then if you've only done coursework, the most important thing here is just to mention that it was a course. It was, general coursework if you were like within that first or second year of your degree in college, anything like that. I've seen it where some people might get a little confused if they list just the college, or some folks will say Bachelor's of Arts in Education, but no date, and it actually looks like you graduated. So if it's pending, make sure you put pending 2020, 2024, just so that way the recruiter sees, going for a bachelor's degree, so ATS is happy because you have that requirement, but you're still letting them know that you still have a little bit of time. The other thing with this section, just highlight the school that you actually graduated from. If you went to 3 different colleges, we don't need every single one, just the one you graduated from. And the coursework, again, if you go to multiple schools, you only really need to list the last one or the one that you graduated from. Absolutely add the location and, of course, the date. The only note here is if you graduated over 10 years ago, drop the date. I mean, I know it's ATS friendly, but then what's happening is you may be showcasing your age or how irrelevant your degree may be. And I mean this with, like if you're in marketing and you graduate in the 80s, has nothing to do with the marketing that we do today. And that person could absolutely have the experience marketing today, but the degree automatically goes, oh, outdated. And we don't want to do that. So if you're over 10 years since you've graduated, just drop the date so it just looks a little bit better for you. Then the other items that we talked about, the volunteer work, other related content like associations, only add these if you have space. And then the other thing is, are they current? I had a client that had about 10 lines of volunteer work, but they were all 3-4 years old. It wasn't worth listing because of her story, so it wasn't worth listing something that was outdated. Same thing with associations. Look at the dates. Are they current associations that you're a part of? How long ago did you participate? And do they have anything to do with where you're going, right? If I were moving into recruiting or anything with HR, I would list everything I have right now. But if I were flipping and going into sales, being a resume writer doesn't actually mean anything in sales, right? So you have to balance how that all works for you. And then a couple last miscellaneous items. That line, references upon request, or even adding your references, unless you're in a federal resume format, you don't need this. This is very outdated and it's an absolute waste of space. It should be in a separate file. The second item is please try to be 1 to 2 pages. It's pretty much a standard. Funny enough, my entry levels are 1 pages. My middle career, they tend to be 2. And then as you get past 15 years, back to 1. Because again, our focus is only the last 10 to 15 years. So I'm pretty much never including that information. And if I am, because I had somebody from Micron for 30 years, I am minimizing it. So we go back to 1 page. It's kind of a weird loop, but definitely don't go past 2 pages. And templates. I write my resumes from scratch, so I'm a little biased, but if you're going to use a template, be careful with what you choose. Text boxes can be very restricting, and so if you cannot fit all of your information, find a different one. Or sometimes there's too much white space. When there's like 1.5 inches between your name and the next section, you're wasting space. You do not include photos in your resume. So if you're going to use a template, I do like resumegenius.com. There's some free templates out there, and I like a lot of them, but just be careful when you're choosing them because you don't want to be restricted. Find one that works for you, not the other way around. And Pamela will be talking about LinkedIn, but all of this information can also be on LinkedIn. You still want to target your profile, basically how your resume is lined up. You don't want it to not match. But if you want to add more information about your career, you want to add those associations, the volunteer work, everything that we had to pull out because we just couldn't fit it on paper, LinkedIn is great. And you get to add your picture, which is always wonderful. So Pamela will talk more about that, but definitely think about that if you don't have one. And this is my contact information and my lovely partner, Vera, who is also a resume writer. So give us a call if you have any questions, or even if you just need a quick review to make sure you're going in the right direction. So I will stop sharing. And is Pamela, I think she, Deb, did you see if Pamela dropped out or is she back?
She should be back, but let me see if she dropped out. She was having some difficulties. So let me see if she's back on here. She was just a second ago. She's here. Pamela, can you, I'm going to pull up your stuff to share.
Okay.
And I'll pull up her PowerPoint. Let me see if I can get that open. So one thing, by the way, between LinkedIn, and I do career coaching also for an outplacement firm. I always talk about the difference, by the way, between your resume and your LinkedIn. Your resume is kind of like a business form, and your resume is a place more for your personality to stand out and shine. So that's kind of how I do that. And let me see if I can find Pamela's on here. I downloaded it and I'm not seeing it now.
And Pamela, I can see you, but is your audio working? She's not connected to audio.
So you might want to call in Pamela if you can, and I am not seeing your PowerPoint.
Well, Stacy, if you can unmute yourself, we could just do a quick Q&A for
yes,
us.
Thank you.
So feel free to raise your hand. It's the bottom right. If you open the participants list, you can raise your hand, or physically, or just send a chat. And just remember, oh, there you are. Question?
I see that there was a question about sharing the slides. Is there a recording that we could share?
Yes, we are recording this. The only thing is I need to figure out if I have everybody's email within Zoom, because we registered a little differently for this course, but I'm happy to share my slides and the recording. So if we can get the recording out, we'll definitely send that to everyone. What is the best way to get noticed on ATS? That's a great question. So you want to make sure that you have all of those missing parts. So your title, the names of the organizations, the locations, the dates, but as well as those buzzwords. You can try to use jobscan.com, I believe. I haven't quite figured that whole system out, but it will definitely show you some key buzzwords that you might be missing. Don't go by the rate, but go by that section to see if you've got everything in there. And that's, I believe that's what recruiters, you know, they look at, okay, I want to look at 80% matching, and everybody else just gets the automatic rejection. So buzzwords are huge. So definitely take a peek at that job description. Even things like high school diploma required, add your high school diploma. It'll give you a couple more points. I tend to not do that if you have something more than that, but I mean, that's kind of how that system works. All right, another question was, just to clarify, you recommend going back 10 years in your resume. Yes, only focus on the last 10 to 15 years of your resume. So that's about 2005 now. It's kind of funny, but if you say the 90s, it feels like it was an eternity ago, right? And if even more so if you have work experience in the 80s. So really you just need to focus on the last 10 to 15 years. And again, you know, it might, depending on your story, funny enough, all of my Micron clients have been there for 30 years. So I try to work that into their resume because they have 30 years experience at one company. That's so unheard of nowadays. But there's always exceptions to the rule. But for the most part, If you can focus on the last 10 to 15 years, it's absolutely relevant. I hope that answers your question. Quite a few online applications now require dates in terms of resumes and education. So does dropping the date really work? So, and Stacy, please feel free to jump in. You know you're on an updated ATS. You know how when you upload your beautiful resume and then you go to the job application and it's annoying because you have to type everything back in? That's an older ATS. If it pulls over information, it's more current, it's more updated. And you still have to look for things like the bullets looking funny and having to correct those because they might be the funny little symbols. So yes and no. So you still have the opportunity to add the date, but the recruiter's not looking at the job application. The recruiter's looking at that piece of paper. And it really does depend on how old the education is. The other thing I do is if I'm listing education and the certifications together, because I'm out of space, but I'm listing the certifications because they were just last year, I have to list the graduation date, even if it was in the 90s. So it's kind of what looks best. So it does work when the recruiter's looking at it because they automatically don't think, oh, this is irrelevant, or oh, this person's older or really young, depending. But ATS-wise, you should have it, but in that job application, you can just type it in and you'll be fine. Let's see. If doing an in-person interview, whenever that begins again, should you still take a printed resume with you to the interview? Absolutely. A copy for yourself and a copy for each interviewer. You'd be surprised how many people just be like, oh, I forgot to print it, and have no idea who you are. So if you can hand them your resume that's nicely printed, colored, everything else, then they'll be able to take a peek at it while you're talking to them. And it just makes you look very, very professional. So make sure it's in a nice folder, you have a little notepad, all of those things. I mean, Stacy, I know you're a career coach as well. Is there anything you want to add to any of this?
Well, I have used JobScan and I do recommend it. It's not perfect because it's machine intelligence, but it gives you a good idea of some keywords in there that you could add to your resume. So I like it, and it's free for the first 5 that you do every month. So free is good.
Free is good.
You know, I actually recommend JobScan too quite often because it lets people see those keywords. And the other thing with ATS, if you don't have those exact keywords in there, it will not see it. So some ATSs, and it will tell you, it can tell you which ATS is the one that company's using. Some of them don't read past tense or don't read plural, and it'll kind of give you an idea. Some of them use LinkedIn a lot, so it kind of gives you an idea of which one they're doing. But the keywords is really amazing, and sometimes people realize they don't have the keywords they should have in their resume. One person was a project manager, and she realized she didn't have project management actually written out in her resume anywhere. So it's pretty eye-opening to them too. So it's not the everything all, but it is a really good place to start seeing what those keywords are and what you should be looking at.
Yeah, don't worry about the score. It's not the JobScan score. Don't worry about that because I've had, you know, a few like, oh my gosh, it's so low. I'm like, yeah, don't worry about that because it's a machine, but the keywords is definitely where it's at for sure.
And Pamela is on. Pamela, can you speak and make sure we can hear you? And then I'll put up your, oh, I see you.
Finally, I can finally be here. Thank you for your patience.
I am going to share my screen with Pamela's.
And I'm going to turn my video off just in case I get okay. I can actually share my screen, maybe.
See if you can work it. Try that. I'll unshare.
It says I can't start screen share while you're the other participant.
I got it. I just took it off.
Okay. Let's see if I can. Let's see if it works. Can you guys see that?
Not yet. Nope.
What am I doing wrong?
Let me just do mine and just tell me when to move it.
Okay. I'm going to go
I'm going to
back
go to your
up.
first one right here. To your. Can you guys see mine? Okay, it's fine.
Don't see yours. Okay.
Yep.
I can see yours. Great. I'm a recruiter since 1999 and have coached a lot of different people all over the world. And so next slide, sorry. So sometimes job hunting can be really scary and it can create a lot of fear and anxiety, especially during this time of COVID. But there's help out there. So don't feel like you have to scream. Okay, next slide. A job hunt, even in the best of times, can be highs and lows. It's a wild ride. Next. You're going to have to juggle a lot of things at the same time, and you can't drop the ball. Next. Sometimes you can barely stand it, all the unknowns, but I encourage you to hang in there because things will, you'll get a lot of, go back, I'm sorry. You'll get a lot of ideas and we'll give you a lot of ideas and tools in this session, I hope. I'm going to give you some inspiration to drive you forward. As Stacy Harshman talked about, focusing on your strengths, it's very important. And Stephanie Renk talked about how to package yourself with a resume. I'm going to give you a different perspective. This is a tree that has a lot of different faces in it. I don't know how many you can see, but I want to have you change your perspective just a bit. Can anybody see 10 faces in there? So, okay, next slide. What matters a lot is how you see yourself. A coach can help you see the greatness within. There's a lot of options for you, and a coach can help you decide what, it's all about you and your decision, but they can present different options to you, different paths for you to follow, and it's up to you to decide which one, but they can help you with asking questions and helping you figure out where you want to be and where you want to go. A coach is a little bit like a Sherpa. It can help you they can help you on your journey and to reach the summit and to see the bigger picture, what's all the different ways that you can present yourself. They can help you navigate the turbulent times and get through the rough waters and find a way to have smooth sailing in your career. They can help you transform your life, your attitude, the different obstacles that are standing in your way, and you will find true beauty at the end of your pathway. They can help you find your passion and your purpose and things that you really love. And a coach can also help you prepare for job interviews and fulfill you with confidence. They can help you map out your career. They can help you reach the goals that you set for yourself. Now, it might take a bit of reinventing yourself. This is a picture of Tootsie. It was a movie where a male actor, Dustin Hoffman, was told that no one will hire you. And so he reinvented himself as a female actress and became super popular in this film. You might have to do a bit of reinventing yourself. And this is a perfect time to add arrows to your quiver. A new set of skills, new things. A lot of people are reactive in their job approach. They respond to job ads on whatever platform they're looking at, websites and so forth. But I want to encourage you to take a different approach. Take a proactive approach. You need to fish and hunt, figure out where you want to go, where you want to be. Don't just react to job ads, but really approach the companies that you're interested in. I want you to take a targeted approach. Figure out where you want to go, what you want to do, where you want to be, who you want to work for. Now, in the old days, networking was done face-to-face, handing business cards. But today, with COVID, and you also hear about jobs through the grapevine, and this is part of it. So now you have to do a different kind of networking because, and LinkedIn is a perfect way to do that online. You want to leverage this tool as much as possible to really figure out who you need to meet, who you want to work for. It's an amazing tool, and if you're not using it, a coach can help you figure out the best way to do it. Now, LinkedIn, a lot of people just ask for the job the job alerts, but you can use the search tool on LinkedIn not only to find people at different companies that you might want to work for, but you can also search companies on the search bar. So utilize LinkedIn to really get your job search going. It doesn't take Einstein. It's not there's no set formula. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to do a great job search. A coach can help you, but you don't need to be a rocket scientist, but you do need to be flexible, and you need to realize that you are an incredible person that a company needs. You have lots of skills and talents and abilities, so it's time for you to toot your own horn during the networking phase, on a resume, in your LinkedIn profile, interviewing, all phases, your resume, your cover letter. You need to be proud of your accomplishments. Your mom might have told you not to brag about yourself, but this is a time for you to brag. You have to be proud of your achievements. You have to be proud of your accomplishments and really let them know. It's also a time to take chances. Take a risk. Try a new thing. You might feel like you're not qualified for a job. You're more qualified for a job than you think, because a company will not interview you unless they think that you're ready. You need to make it easy for the recruiter. Don't make them hunt for your contact info. Make it clear on your resume how to reach you. You can have an excellent work life, and you don't have to work for Mr. Burns or anyone like that. It's time to take control of your work life. It's going to take a lot of time to find a job that you like, but the most reliable way to predict the future is to create it. That's what Abraham Lincoln said. So create the life that you want now. It's time for you to really take off. Are you ready to blast off into your future? you can have a joyful work life. Thank you for listening. And thank you, Deb, for operating my slides.
Yeah, it makes it a little, like, oops, stop there. And it kind of difficult for you. Poor Pamela, this whole time she's been trying to get back in. So she got kicked out, back in, kicked out, back in. So she's been spending this whole time trying to do that part of
I
it.
appreciate your patience, everyone. Thank you.
The part on LinkedIn too is, remember that LinkedIn is part of your personal brand, just like your resume is. So like I said earlier, like your LinkedIn is where you can shine. It is a place to put some of those smaller things, the volunteer stuff that you've done, the even like you've never put your high school on your resume. Sometimes it's worth it to put it on your LinkedIn, because if you go to a high school that a lot of people know and you're still in that same community, then people feel that tied to you. So LinkedIn is that place to get a little more personal. Then your resume is the place to make it a business document. And I just had a really long conversation with someone about that, one of my clients the other day, that wanted to do all this stuff on his resume. And it's like, the resume is a standard business document. Your LinkedIn, you should have a banner, you should have background, you should have a picture that's professional, you need to have a headline that works, not where you work right now, but where you want to go, and it should be aspirational. And with that, we should open up to questions. We can do it by a raised hand and have people say that. We only have maybe like time for one question more. Does someone else have a question? Madison Martinez, you raised your hand. Let me find you, and I will unblock you so you can unmute. Oops, unmute. There you go.
Hi, Madison.
Quick question. When you go in job search, how do you know what jobs are available right now during, at least like during COVID, like with how everything's going right now?
There's actually some lists that are out there if you start searching. So like if you put in who's hiring, also think about the places that are doing well right now, the types of companies that are doing well.
Okay.
Right. So the companies are doing well, things around distribution, things around food preparation kind of stuff, and not in supermarkets. And those aren't not necessarily frontline, but think about the back ends that also have to be set up. People that do workflow. There's a couple companies I know hiring right now, ServiceNow, and it's called ServiceNow. They do things around computers. They're in the Bay Area, but they are doing a lot of remote. Also look at remote places.
Okay.
Stacy,
There's a lot of companies. There's a lot of companies doing remote work, especially in the animation medicine. Yeah.
Okay.
Because and video games. There's a lot of people who are hiring even now during this time.
I've had 4 clients get job offers in the last like week. So their people are definitely hiring. But it depends on what field they're in. I have those that are in certain fields, they're seeing cricket. So it's kind of expanding them to think outside into a different field also. Stacy, do you have anything or?
I was just going to say, Indeed is an aggregator. So that is a website that goes out and looks at the web and crawls the web for job openings. So that would be a good resource to look at, is Indeed.
Okay, I'll definitely check that out.
Indeed, she's correct.
And LinkedIn has a hashtag that's become popular. I believe it's hashtag hire now. I believe that's one that is pretty popular out there for jobs.
And then there's another one on here that came to in the chat, which is from Ingrid Mesa, who's on here, who said, so it's HTTPS, that one, layoffs.fyi /. And a lot of companies I found too are actually hiring in some departments and doing hiring freezes in others. It depends on what they need. Thank you for putting it to everyone.
So if think about layoffs, just play around with it, because I found a table. So it's not just layoffs. It's not that like depressing. There's a table and there's a filter about companies that are hiring.
Yeah.
All right. I'll definitely look deep into this then. Thank you so much.
Good. Any other questions? To raise your hand or?
I know
Okay, a
that
minute left.
Amazon is looking for lots and lots of people.
Right.
Ooh, okay.
I guess it kind of dive into who's hiring, like who is really busy right now. So online education is really busy right now. Online marketplaces are really busy right now. People that are doing workflow like Zoom, Workday, a lot of those are really busy right now. So kind of think of those ideas and ask other people who they think might be hiring, and it'll give you an idea of who's
Okay.
out there. And then Indeed, like Indeed and Glassdoor and all of them are places that aggregate. But I do know that some of them haven't been pulled off there. I've had people that have applied and then they find out that they're doing a hiring freeze. Sometimes they go away, sometimes they don't.
All right, cool. Thank you.
So tomorrow we are extremely lucky to be doing another webinar. Hopefully some of you guys can join us on, we're doing